Call to order, November 14th, 2019 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is additions and deletions to the agenda. Are there any? None? Next item is the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Dr. Day.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Landers. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Next item is Somerset Academy. Request for a major site plan approval for K-8 charter school to be known as Somerset Academy, located within Point West Development, the northeast corner of 16th Street and 76 Drive. Point West School Property LLC is the owner. Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard LLC is the agent. Zoning is PD-TND, Planned Development Traditional Neighborhood Design. Land use, M1, medium density, up to 8 units per acre. SP-MA-19-06-//0011008-84201. This matter is quasi-judicial. Gentlemen, have you had any ex parte communications?
For full disclosure, I do own property in Point West. I do not believe that will affect my decision one way or another.
Okay, is there any other? At this time, I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chairman Brognano. For the record, John McCoy with the County Planning Department. This is an application, a major site plan application for a K-8 charter school. The subject site is in the Point West development on the east side of Point West at the northeast corner of 76th Drive and 16th Street. The property is zoned PD-TND, which was a rezoning that occurred with the Point West development, and this site was approved for a school site during the Point West conceptual plan and does have a condition that's tied to it related to that overall approval, which the plan is consistent with. So that's a little bit of the history of the subject site. This is a site plan overlay and aerial, so you can see that the site was cleared and filled and grassed with the Point West development, and that's largely the way it is today as a field and a track that was approved through the Point West development. Gives you a feel for the layout of the proposed improvements on the overall. The next slide is just a black and white of the overall. Again, north is to your right, and this gives you a feel for the proposed improvements. The next slide I'd like to get to, it is proposed in 3 phases, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the phasing. Each phase has one 2-story building in it, so this is the building to be built in phase 1, building to be built in phase 2, building to be built in phase 3. Phases 1 and 2 consist of 600 students, and phase 3 consists of 500 students for a total of 1,700 students maximum. Probably the simplest way to understand the phasing plan is everything south of this dashed line is a phase 1 improvement except for the building. Everything north of the dashed line except for the parking lot that's tied to phase 2 is a phase 3 improvement. So generally that's how the phasing and improvements lay out with those 3 buildings tied to the phases. Next item I'd like to talk about is parking and queuing. And one of the things that are sort of unique to charter schools is working with our county attorney's office. There's a state educational facilities requirements, and the applicant can opt between the 2. So from a parking perspective, the county parking code and the state educational facility parking code differ, and the state requires fewer spaces based on the calculations that, versus what the county would use as far as the different metrics. The applicant has chosen to go with the state, and we understand that they're allowed to do that. Like I say, it does yield fewer spaces. So we established a monitoring condition where essentially the staff would monitor, make sure that they were contained within their site and it functioned well. So with phase one, if they need additional parking, they could expand into phase two, and likewise in phase two, they could expand into phase three. In addition, which it doesn't show on this particular slide, but there's the ability to provide some overflow parking in this area, and then also parking within the overall phase. So this staff is recommending a monitoring condition that we would continue to monitor them through all phases and actually build out, and that if additional parking is needed, that additional parking be provided or operational changes be made to accommodate it so that they basically do contain their operation within their overall site. The parking does, as it's illustrated here, does increase by phase. So you can see the phase one parking area is the south, the phase two parking area, and then the phase three parking area at build out. The other item I'd like to talk about is queuing, and it's very much the same. There's a one-way circulation within this driving aisle for the passenger vehicles for the pickup and drop-off. So this one way is a double lane at one point, then triple lane as you get closer to the building. And as far as the pickup and drop-off go, that will provide additional queuing on the overall site because you can double stack or triple stack under certain circumstances. Again, we want to monitor it for each phase. If expansion is necessary in phases 1 or 2, it's easy enough to expand. And then in phase 3, we would work with them. And also there are a variety of operational things that could come into play to help with any sort of queuing issues as far as stagger release or other things that can be done to address queuing in that respect. So again, establishing a monitoring condition just to make sure that essentially the operation is contained on site. So with that, I'd like to move on to traffic circulation. And one of the items with this particular plan is they've submitted a traffic management system, which is a narrative and operational plan about the bus drop-off, the passenger vehicle pickup and drop-off, the pedestrian, and how all that will function from an operational standpoint. I would like to add a condition because traffic engineering has asked for some minor revisions to that plan, and that those minor revisions be provided prior to site plan release. So would like to add a condition that prior to site plan release, that an updated traffic management plan be approved by traffic engineering, or the applicant obtain essentially approval of that plan from traffic engineering. So wanted to get that out and make that known, that added condition. As far as the improvements go, the applicant will be constructing sidewalks along 76th Drive. There's an existing sidewalk along 16th Street that'll end up getting modified to work with the facility and the plan that they're laying out. In addition, there'll be in phase 1, there'll be a turn lane on 16th Street, a westbound right turn lane onto 76th Drive, and there'll also be a median improvement that will essentially limit some of the turning maneuvers as far as the way traffic engineering would want this intersection to operate. So for buses will enter here, and this will be the bus loop, a dedicated bus loop to pick up and drop off and then go back onto 16th Street. For passenger vehicles will come up 16th Street, turn right on 76th Drive, enter the site, go through the one-way, pick up or drop off, and then in the early phases, they'll exit through here. Phase 2, they'll circle a little further north, and then in phase 3, they'll actually orbit the entire site, exit here if for southbound traffic, but in phase 3, they can also exit at this point if they want to get onto Point West Drive and go north. So that's generally the up-close traffic circulation plan. The next slide is sort of an overall traffic circulation plan, and I want to touch a couple items. First of all, the site's highlighted in yellow. So the yellow box is essentially the subject site that contains the site plan. The entry and exit point is right here. So again, passenger vehicles coming up would come up 76 Drive, come into the site, pick up or drop off, then exit the site on 16th Manor. In the early phases for northbound traffic, they'd come to the traffic circle, go up Point West Drive to State Road 60. For southbound vehicles, they would continue around the traffic circle, exit down Point West Drive to this point, and then be able to go east or west on Point West Drive. At this location, again, is the right turn lane and the median improvement that's going to occur within phase one. For the other phases as they're developed, there was a traffic study that was reviewed and approved by our traffic engineering division, and that study required the additional improvements based on the phasing. One of the improvements in phase two is a traffic signal at 74th Avenue and 16th Street with a southbound right turn lane, and that needs to be constructed prior to a certificate of occupancy for a phase two. They also need to adjust the signal timing for the existing signal at 74th Avenue and State Road 60. For the phase three, and prior to a CO for phase three, they'll need to add an additional left turn lane in phase three on State Road 60, going on to 74th Avenue. Wanted to mention that 76 Drive, 16th Manor, these internal roads are private, and the applicant's responsible for establishing the access rights to those roadways as part of their work on this site. With that, I would like to get to the next slide, which is the landscape plan. Really, the only special feature in this landscape plan, which goes back to the condition of the original conceptual approval, is the type B buffer that's required along the east property line. So, and that's shown on this plan, and that'll be provided in two phases, basically on the south half and the north half. The remainder of the landscape plan is consistent with the land development regulations as far as perimeter buffering, parking lot trees, foundation plantings, and the non-vehicular open space. So with that, staff would like to get to the recommendation. Staff does recommend approval with the conditions in the staff report, and with the one added condition that the updated transportation management plan be approved prior to site plan release, and the other items, the turn lanes as detailed in the staff report, the intersection improvements as detailed in the staff report, the sidewalk, the traffic signal adjustment and construction, the parking monitoring, the queuing monitoring, and the applicant being responsible to establish access rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Gentlemen, do you have any questions of staff?
I just have a clarification question. So John, the revised condition or the new condition that you're recommending is that an updated traffic management plan must be approved prior to site plan of release?
I think probably the best way to phrase it is prior to site plan release, the applicant shall obtain approval from traffic engineering of a revised transportation management plan. And they've already got comments from traffic engineering about what traffic engineering is seeking as far as the revised plan. But that would be, phrasing-wise, our standard condition that the applicant obtain approval.
I have a question, please.
Please.
The bus route section through there, when they exit, is that strictly a westbound, or will they be able to also go eastbound on 16th Street?
It's my understanding that there is not a restriction on the, it's essentially a full movement driveway. I would anticipate that just based on the population density, that most would want to head back towards 74th Avenue.
But the third phase will require a light at 74th and 16th.
The second phase will require a light at 74th and 16th.
How many students currently attend the charter school, Indian River County Charter School?
I do not know that number. And
They propose this will max out at 1,700 students.
correct, and essentially, site plans are good for generally a phase site plan could be good for a maximum of about 20 years.
And you already answered most of the question, but the staff is the one who will monitor the parking situation. And your staff will monitor that?
Correct. Their staff's going to be responsible for the day-to-day operations, and our staff is going to monitor to see whether it's contained on site and whether or not additional measures need to be taken. The county staff will.
And how often will you monitor that?
Generally, the monitoring is complaint-driven, so we're going to be checking it. Certainly, if there's any complaints, in our discussions with the applicant, and again, schools are kind of a unique animal from operations and from a development standpoint. They've as much as told us, usually the first 2 weeks, there's a lot of unsettled behavior and a lot of figuring things out. And then generally after the first 2 weeks, things should be pretty close to normal and people should have things figured out. And that would generally be if we were going to monitor that September, October, so early in the school year, but long enough to let folks understand how things should be operating.
So if during any one of these phases you determine as staff that there's a problem, how do you enforce it?
First of all, we contact the applicant and we say, hey, we've observed this behavior, let's discuss it. And certainly in discussing a lot of the development aspects with them, they have both physical ways and operational ways of dealing with things. So again, trying to resolve it through a discussion, a solution that whether the staff propose it or whether the applicant propose it, as to, again, depending upon what the problem may be. It may be as simple as people, parking off-site and not using the parking that's intended. Again, that's a corrective measure. In speaking with the applicant, at other schools, they have, they'll sanction parents for having behavior that's, inappropriate as far as the way it's supposed to be conducted.
But you do have additional land that can be used for additional parking.
Correct.
And so it may come to the point where you say, build out X number of spaces in this spot?
Correct. In phases 1 and 2, that's easier because there's the phase 3 parking or phase 2 parking that could be completed. Even within the phase 3 build out, that shell, you can see that there's room for additional spaces. That's not the desire. And then also at the north end, the applicants provided a stabilized parking design that works back into this area.
Another question, if I may. The concern that I have is that the residents of Point West obviously would be interested in this school location, and the kids that may walk to school, and I know that's not real common anymore, but the access across 16th Street from the South Village to the Central Village, I mean, what is being done regarding that from a pedestrian standpoint?
I'm going to let the applicant speak to that a little bit more because part of that traffic management plan provides for that overall circulation. And it's my understanding, and the applicant can confirm this, that part of that plan is hiring, and I'm not sure if it's an on-duty or off-duty sheriff's deputy that would direct traffic at some location. And I would think that the children would be directed to a protected, location like that.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to come over or come forward and answer that question? Please, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Erica Raines. I am the principal of this school as well as a few others in St. Lucie County. With regards to the SRD that was referred to, the school resource officer, resource deputy, we do have to have one of those by law now. So we will be employing an officer or a deputy or a guardian for that campus, and that person does assist with the off-site on the roads around the site, traffic as well as getting the students onto campus safely. I believe we've built in a handful of crosswalks as well. With regards to, you asked about getting the students that are walking, 0 to 2 miles, we don't bus. I bus 2 miles all the way to the end of the county. At one of my campuses, I run 11 buses. We own our own fleet, so we will be doing that. The only walkers typically come from the immediate neighborhood.
Which is my concern, because they're gonna be walking right across 16th Street, which is gonna get busier and busier.
Do I have a crosswalk there? So there's not a crosswalk there at that site, but I am able to place a person there. Right now at the St. Lucie West campus, and I'll use this one as an example because the parking lot's very similar. I have the side with the buses and the side with the parent drop-off and pickup with the triple stacking. So I'm using that one as an example. We have no less than, in the mornings, 11 employees outside, 10 employees plus my officer outside for morning drop-off. And then for afternoon, we have more than that out there in the afternoons.
Understood, but the drop-off, you're on the north side of 16th Street. I'm looking at that intersection and, whether it's a crossing guard or somebody like that to assist the kids, that's my concern.
Right. And we do with our elementary campuses, our K-5s and our K-8s. We also contract, and I'm not sure how it works in this particular community, but with my city in Port St. Lucie, I contract with them for crossing guards during certain hours in the morning and certain hours of the afternoon.
Anything further, Jim?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions of staff? Please.
I do. I have a question or two. Hello. You mentioned traffic study that was done.
Yes.
So did they consider that charter schools, I know she said that they have 11 buses, but charter schools typically, and I'm not saying this one would, but typically they have more car pickups and drop-offs than a public school. So has that been considered when you were doing the traffic study?
And I'm going to defer that question to the applicant's traffic engineer who happens to be here and knows the nuts and bolts of what was included in the traffic study. So I'll ask the traffic engineer to address that.
Brian Good, Kimley Horn and Associates. Busing was considered as an amenity that would be provided with the school operation. So in the traffic or trip generation characteristic, busing activities was included.
Okay. So not that that would be any different than any other public school, is that what you're saying?
No, it's actually different. Private schools, the land use characteristic from a traffic perspective for a private school, the ITE studies don't include busing activities. So for this particular school, it more resembled a public school in the sense that it provided busing for the student population. Mm-hmm. So a public school traffic generation characteristics was used primarily because busing was provided. If busing wasn't provided, a characteristic that did not include the factors of busing would be appropriate to use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I had another question, if that's
Sure,
okay.
please.
It's 1,700 students max, and it looks like, can you go back to the parking? So phase one, I don't think they'd have a problem, like if you had a parent night or something. That's when we run into problems with public schools is, when you have a function at the school. That's typically when you get the problems, is people park wherever. And I know that's a problem at every school, not just a charter school or a private school. So I don't think that it would be a problem until you get to phase three if you're at 1,700 max. So just curious whether or not that's been thought about, is overflow parking as far as events go.
Correct. Staff, and I'm going to eventually pass it on to the applicant to explain a little bit more, but staff did have that discussion with the applicant on more than one occasion because just being a parent, I've experienced that very same thing at some schools. And about events, about potentially having multiple events at a school sometimes, just depending upon the scheduling, and looking at options and alternatives to provide really that sort of peak event parking. They indicate that, one, they schedule very carefully. They try to stagger both times and day-wise. And under some of the circumstances, the bus loop may not be active, and there may be other areas that could accommodate parking that wouldn't normally. And again, some of the areas I've indicated for additional parking, the grass areas that are convenient enough provide quite a bit of additional area that could accommodate overflow parking, as well as the overflow in the back area.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they understood that, because
they can speak-
in a locked-in community like this, when you have events, I know we have that problem at some of our schools, especially when you're inside a community like this.
I think it's worth mentioning that the site, as presented early on in the presentation, is pretty much a cleared field at this point. So there's not a lot of vegetated area so there's an opportunity for overflow
It's
parking.
the old polo field, right?
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. So there's that opportunity within the phase area that's not developed.
Right. And the applicants can speak a little bit more to about events and how they schedule and handle events, and knowing that, that parking is an issue.
I just know we deal with it, and that's when your calls come.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rolando Llanes. I'm principal of Civica Architecture. We're the architects and planners on the project. So good evening to the boards. I could echo what John was saying and how he explained it in terms of the fact that the site, being at 14 acres, clearly affords us a tremendous amount of land that can, during events, double as overflow parking. And not just the areas that John mentioned, but even at a full build-out, we have those areas where the terms phase 1 and 3 areas are written, basically the field, as you see it today, really. That area provides a tremendous amount of space for any overflow parking needs that we may have. Interestingly enough, you also, when you're doing an event in the evenings, the queue line, because you have a 3-lane queue line, a lot of that in other schools, in fact, in Ms. Raines' other school in Port St. Lucie, we do that. 1 lane of the queue is used for parallel parking. So on those evenings when you might have an event, not only do you have overflow parking areas, but the parking that normally would be part of the queue can actually serve and still allow for cars to back out with 24 feet back up and all of that. So the site kind of transforms itself for those events in a way that it absorbs a lot of cars. And then also, I think as John mentioned, scheduling and these events. You have a full K-8, so you have the sort of the elementary grades, the middle school grades, and those events can be done at separate times in separate parts of the year. So I think when you put all that together, we feel quite confident that we have what we need. As the campus grows, yes, you have less space, but at the end of the day, we still have a tremendous amount of open area that we could utilize.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
I have a couple of questions.
Please, Mr. Blackwood.
First one's just clarification. On page 3 of the staff memo, it says if the on-site queuing is not sufficient, then the county will seek to have the applicant increase queuing or make operational changes to address the issue, which to me suggests that you'll ask them to, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. At the same time, the final page of the memo in the conditions says the applicant shall provide more on-site queuing or make operational changes for any phase if the queuing provided is not functionally or is functionally insufficient. I just want to clarify that, because those two phrases say different things to me. I want to make sure that if we get a queuing problem, if cars are lined up on 16th Street and causing a disruption there, that we will have the authority to require that they make some queuing changes to eliminate that traffic problem.
Yeah, from staff's perspective, if under the recommended conditions, if it is adopted as a condition, as written under the recommendation section, that would be a condition of site plan approval, which then can be used through the enforcement process as a site plan violation if they don't meet the condition.
Okay.
So
So you're
But it is-
comfortable if there's a queuing problem, you can require the school to solve that queuing problem?
Correct. That's the reason for the condition, the reason the condition is stated in a more affirmative and direct
Okay.
manner.
Second question I had, and I probably should have gone down and looked at this area, but, and someone mentioned it, that this is a large residential area around the school with Point West. And I assume that particularly as they go to 8th grade, a lot of kids, as they build out to 1,700, will be walking or riding their bikes or whatever from this neighborhood. And I'm just curious, is there a sidewalk system that these kids can be on, or are they gonna be walking down the streets of the subdivision each morning, or this project each morning to get to the school?
There is a sidewalk system within Point West. I can't speak as to how well it is developed from all aspects to get you to the campus from each and every neighborhood, and there may be others that have a better handle on that than I do, but there are sidewalks throughout the Point West development as part of the T&D development.
Yeah, I noticed for this project, it seems to have two sidewalks, one along, one running from basically 16th Street along 76th Drive to that entry into the school, and then over on the, well, the right side, as I'm looking at it in my package, up from that Phase 3 corner, parking area corner, up to Point West Drive. But I can't tell from what I'm looking at whether there's any sidewalks attaching to those two sidewalks. And the only reason I raise this, I've got a granddaughter down in Miami who lives close to her school, and the kids just kind of flock to the school who live in that area each morning, and it becomes, you know, a situation that you have to have under control if the kids are going to be walking to school like that. And I am curious, if we were, I know we're requiring traffic, off-site traffic changes. If we were concerned about the walking network from the kids in the neighborhood, would we have the authority to require some type of off-site walking pass, travel pass, safe travel pass for these kids?
And I'm not sure of the answer to that as far as the off-site. Certainly for the adjacent area we have, I might look to Dylan or let Joe to.
Joda Biddle, Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard. I believe the Point West community has sidewalks on both sides, up and down Point West Drive. 16th Street has sidewalks on the north side. There's a ditch on the south side, so there is no sidewalks required on that side. The residential area, the vast majority of the residential area for Point West is to the south. The only other residential is multifamily, which is that curved area you see on the aerial. That's the only, everything else is either commercial, medical is up top, but there are a substantial amount of sidewalks throughout the community. The only issue I see possibly is crossing over 16th Street. There are no stop signs, there are no lights at this time, so we'd have to work with staff on having a designated spot, which if you look at the 76th Drive where the roundabout is, they have every turn lane possible at that intersection. So I know they've talked about doing some improvements in that intersection, but that would be something we'd have to work with staff and engineering. Just there's just no stop condition to have a safe crosswalk from the south side. But as Mrs. Rain stated, you know, with a public resource officer or someone there, I'm sure there's a way it could be dealt with for the children. But Point West has sidewalks all throughout the community. So
Over at Beachland, if you drive past Beachland School in the morning, it's a 20-mile-per-hour zone. I mean, and I have no idea how this relates to site plan, but I'm sitting here thinking about the kids coming across 16th Street.
well, it's what I've been told is it depends on the amount of students coming from a certain area. A lot of the other schools aren't allowed to have these slower speed zones because there's no one walking to the site. Obviously, I think this one could be a candidate for that, but it's going to really depend on the enrollment and if there's actually kids being used. That's what the way it's been explained to me, to have the school zones.
Who makes that decision?
It's essentially the County Traffic Engineering Public Works Division assess them, and when those are warranted, we'll, again, work with the applicants to establish those. So the flashing lights and the low-speed zones are a part of the evaluation through Public Works.
So that would be along that 16th Street section that's adjacent to the school?
That would be the most likely place, yes.
Doesn't the school board also work with you on that?
Correct.
Yeah. I would
And
think
that's
so.
in public schools. In public schools, there's a more established routine with the school board staff and the county public works department for those, yes.
Right, for example, like Storm Grove doesn't have, you don't, when you drive by Storm Grove, you don't get down to 20, although I question that sometimes, but we don't have kids that are walking along
I
there.
think every school questions that, so, but
Yeah.
that's the reasoning behind it is what I've been told.
And if we came to a point where the county thought that there should be a slow-down zone, 20 mile per hour, whatever, during those school hours when kids are going back and forth, does the county have the authority to do that on its own, or does it need some type of consent or agreement with the school to do that?
There's a process in place through Public Works for that, and again, I'm not sure that exact process, whether it's done unilaterally by the county or with cooperation from the school at that location. Typically, it's something schools desire, so typically they're coming to Public Works sort of seeking that, and then it's evaluated.
If you look at Citrus Elementary, kids have to cross 4th Street and they have to cross 27th Avenue. So there's a crossing guard on 27th Avenue, a crossing guard on 4th Street, and there's a slowdown on 4th Street and 27th. And it works really well. I drive through there every day.
Correct, and that's worked through the school district.
Can I
Please.
make a comment about that? And I do know that we had to adjust Citrus parking and the flow because it was stopping traffic on those two streets. And I did go actually do a study myself and go monitor the cars in and cars out to make sure that it was still flowing. Our problem is when the lights turn, that stops everything. So there is still a little bit of an issue sometimes just because of that, especially in season. Yeah.
It's rare.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, and then the school board had to purchase the land to the
Yes.
west, a large portion to
Yes.
try and accommodate that. But Mr. Polakowicz's comment about Beachland Elementary with the slowdown, because that's, to me, that's the closest neighborhood with a school in it. I mean, that's, ultimately, I know there are people in Point West that may have purchased because they had heard a school was going there over the course of the last 10, 15 years. So, I mean, I have concern because I believe, and maybe I can be corrected, but 16th Street is 45 miles an hour through there. I mean, it's not 25, 35 miles an hour. It's not a little street.
Sir, please wait.
So, it is a major concern that I have for those kids that are crossing that area and how that can be addressed, and whether it's a slowdown area in addition to the crossing guard or whatever it may be.
Dylan, do you have any idea how we could express this concern in some way that we can feel confident that if the county believes it's necessary, we can go ahead and do that?
So I was just researching the establishment of school speed zones under Florida statutes. And so what? What's that?
I'm just teasing you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just to quickly go through the statute, the DOT adopts a uniform system of traffic control devices and pedestrian control devices. The department then compiles, publishes, transmits a manual containing all the specifications to the governing bodies of each county and municipality in the state. And then the Department of Transportation and each county and municipality in the state then installs and maintains traffic and pedestrian control devices in conformity with the uniform system. No surprise there. Upon request of the appropriate local government, then DOT installs these types of systems on what appear to be state-maintained roads. And then the county has the responsibility to maintain a school zone located outside of the municipality and on a county road. So it appears to be within the context of the county making such a decision and then having the responsibility to maintain the school zone on a county road. I don't know off the top of my head, but I guess that's 16th, which is right next to the school. That would be a county road area. So just my quick glance, I never like you guys to be suffering from drive-by legal advice, but just going through, you know, it appears to be kind of a county decision on those types of issues. So it'd be something kind of we'd probably have to just kind of stay on top of and figure out if we're going to request or establish one and then doing so in conformance with DOT standards.
Do you think any condition is required or appropriate in our site plan approval to make sure that if the county decides it wants to do that, that it then can do that without any type of objection from the school?
The only issue is I always have concerns in conditions to land use and zoning matters where we're actually imposing conditions on the county government itself as opposed to the applicant. But certainly the issues we'll be aware of, and if the county feels it's necessary to install it, then that becomes a county installation.
You're confident that if the county feels like it's necessary to install it, the county can do it?
Well, it's a county-maintained roadway, so I don't know where they would have the authority to stop us from instituting that on 16th Street.
Thank you.
If I may, not only do we not want the authority to stop you, we would encourage and support you doing that. So we would be in support of that issue.
Thank you. Any further questions? Would anybody like to come forward and speak? Yes, sir, please.
I'm Bruce Smith. I'm the president of the Point West Villa Association. I just would like to address the crosswalk situation. The way I see it as a retired teacher and have dealt with this my whole career, the only place that would be a really good place for kids to cross is at 75th Terrace, which is a little west of the property, east of the property that comes out on 16th Street. There is no sidewalk in Point West that goes all the way up to 16th Street there. There is no sidewalk that goes all the way up to 16th Street on 76th Drive. On Point West Drive, there is no sidewalk that goes all the way up to 16th Street. You have to go much further down to have a sidewalk that goes all the way out. So there would have to be addition of a sidewalk south of 16th Street to bring kids to a sidewalk or to a crosswalk.
Thank you, sir. Okay, appreciate it. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? Please, sir.
My name is Richard Carlin. I live in the East Village. There's a large part of Point West that is not quite finished in development, but it'll be the biggest part of Point West that you haven't really mentioned much about. So there are 900 homes that are going to be there by the end of next year, year and a half. And living there, the intersection of 16th Street and 74th Avenue is extremely dangerous. And I think your intuition of several members is well-founded. And the only question I would say is, why aren't you asking for a Phase 1 requirement for a traffic light? That should be there right from the get-go.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? Please, sir. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, could I ask that gentleman one quick question?
Sir.
Sir?
Sir?
Oh.
Could you come back for one moment, please? Thank you very much.
I just want to clarify, make sure I understand what neighborhood you're talking about, the location of this neighborhood is, as we're looking at it.
The location of the neighborhood is, I don't,
It's,
hard to see, let me see.
it's right down, it's south and east of, so it's catty corner. It's down right
If you,
here.
Start at the
Okay.
intersection of 16th and 74th. It's to the south and to the east.
It's
So
Hole number
large-
18,
It's a large block.
18th hole, huh?
hole 18.
I'm usually in the woods, I never get a good view of that hole.
Yeah, so that's
There are no woods on that hole. It's
Across-
water, you're in the
across
water.
Across the street there are.
It's east of 74th Avenue, that's the main
Yeah,
point.
yes, south of 16th, so.
at 16th Street. It's east of 16th Street, is ultimately.
It's south of 16th Street.
Mhm. South of 16th and east of 74th,
74th.
on hole 18.
Okay.
West of 74th?
No, it's east.
East.
Oh, yeah.
Why it's called the East Village.
It's the 18th hole. Right,
Okay.
by the 18th, 17th. It's where the new phases of houses are, right? They're building in,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be built out in another year and a half, I think.
For the longest time, it was just one or two houses, and then boom.
Thank you, sir.
So why is the traffic signal at that intersection phase 2?
And again, it goes back to the review and approval of the traffic study. It showed it was warranted in that second phase with the traffic that was generated with the second phase, not in the first phase. And just in the review process, we did coordinate with the Point West Property Owners Association. We did have a number come to the different technical review committee meetings, and I think that was one of the items that was probably most commented on. I think everybody would welcome a signal there, including me. But again, the traffic study didn't show that it was warranted until that second phase, and that's really when it would be required, or when the county, when it meets the warrants for a traffic signal. And again, the applicant's traffic engineer is here, and he can probably explain that better than I can.
Brian Good, once again. The Manual Uniform Traffic Code Devices, MUTCD, has quantified standards for when traffic signals should be installed. This intersection was evaluated against background traffic as well as the projected traffic associated with the school, as well as background growth of the community itself. And it wasn't until Phase 2 traffic was added to the intersection that it exceeded the warrants and demonstrated merit for traffic signalization. In addition to the intersection that we're speaking of, the county had required traffic signal warrants at a number of intersections. One is 16th and 74th Avenue, 16th Street and 76th Drive, and 16th Street and 76th Avenue. And 74th Avenue is the only one that was demonstrated to merit signalization with the project.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I'm hoping I'm understanding this correctly, but all these neighborhoods on, I guess it is the south side of 16th Street, am I correct in understanding that those streets leading up to 16th, or I guess they'd be avenues, leading up to 16th Street don't have sidewalks that go up to 16th Street? Is that, did I hear that correctly? So are we in the situation where kids who live to the south of 16th Street, if they walk?
I heard this statement from the aerial that I was looking at in my seat. I see sidewalks within the Point West community from the streets south of 16th Street. What I don't see is the ped crossings that we were discussed earlier, and that's where I believe the principal had indicated a school resource officer could be made available to enhance the crossing safety.
And I don't know if this falls within your expertise, but if there are kids walking from those neighborhoods to the school, and if there aren't sidewalks that they can follow to get to 16th Street and then get to the crossing point on 16th Street, I view that as a problem. And assuming you do too, what is the solution? I mean, who builds the sidewalks so these kids can safely walk to school?
Yeah, So my experience is that once a school goes in and if a sidewalk is deemed necessary for pedestrian traffic, then either a crossing or a sidewalk is put in. The state has programs to work with municipalities to help fund and construct those facilities once they're deemed necessary. There's a demand for them, there's a need, they serve a purpose. So that would be my response in the sense that there would have to be a demonstrated need for a sidewalk. A sidewalk would not have to be existing, and then the county would then usually take measures to evaluate to see if there's a project that could be implemented to provide that amenity.
May I?
Please.
You're talking about that corner there, but if you are talking about the build-out that that gentleman was referring to, there is a cross street that goes from, I know when you go from the 18th hole over to the clubhouse, that's, I would assume, where kids would be walking across, not necessarily this corner. They would be walking across on, it's not on this map, I don't think?
It's actually 14th Lane.
Yeah, it's not on this map, so it's the next.
Correct, it's south of this aerial on
Right.
74th.
You
There's
have another,
a cross back to the clubhouse from the
right.
the east side of.
That's, I think, where the kids would be crossing from. If they lived in that neighborhood, they would be crossing that street. That's not the one where you're talking about putting an SR or a guard.
Correct. At that point, they'd be crossing 74th Avenue. So I guess there are probably a couple of options. One is crossing and then going north, or crossing and coming into Point West, the central village, and then working their way up through the central village to.
Right. If they cross, though, into Point West, then there's a sidewalk. Correct. And they can walk that sidewalk to the next sidewalk up to the school. If they go to along 74th, there is a canal on the right.
Correct.
And there's no sidewalk on the left because that's the driving range.
Correct. I believe that's accurate.
Right. So I don't think kids would be walking along that street. At least I wouldn't want my kid walking along that street. I would want them walking across. So my point is there an intention then to have somebody at a crosswalk, if there are lots of kids from that community coming across, that wouldn't be on this corner, that would be on the other corner, 14th Lane, I guess it was. So that's where you would get the problem with kids walking there. Now, I see there's a small community just to the right on 16th Street, just to the right of 74th Avenue. I'm not sure if kids would be coming from that direction. That's where the crosswalk is what you're talking about. Any kids coming from there would probably be following from there. However, if we have how many ever homes being built out, and we have kids walking from that other crosswalk, you haven't addressed that yet.
Yeah, I was speaking at the intersections of 16th Street and Point West Drive and 16th Street and 76th Drive, which are intersections more immediately adjacent in proximity to the school. I wasn't referring to intersections once you got east of 74th Avenue.
Yeah, it is not, it's south of 16th. And do you have another map that shows that? No.
We don't have a map that goes that broad.
Okay.
From the side.
And I think when that gentleman spoke about how many homes are in there, it kind of made me go, whoa, that's where you're going to have the problem, is kids walking across that part of 74th Avenue. There are a lot more homes in there than there are in this area. And right now, it's hard to get a golf cart across there if it's real busy.
Correct, and
There are not sidewalks on 16th Street, as we're looking at it now on this
there
picture.
are on the north side, from
The north side of 16th there is, on the south side there isn't because of the canal that was mentioned.
Okay.
County doesn't place sidewalks next to canals because of the hazards they can represent to pedestrians. And the same on 74th. If you look on 74th, there's, lack of a better term, a smattering of sidewalks on the west. Wherever Point West has been improved, there's usually a sidewalk along the frontage of 74th Avenue, but there's no sidewalk on the east, again, because of the drainage canal that exists out
I think Mr. Smith's comment regarding the sidewalk situation is in the central village of Point West, which is primarily where these kids will be coming through to the 76 Drive. There are sidewalks up until where the park is there. That's correct, if I remember. So there's a small area that doesn't have a sidewalk. Other than that, Point West has sidewalks in there. So that's the area that the kids would be more at risk if they were walking and then hitting that intersection where there's a crossing guard or a slow zone or a light or whatever the case may be, a flashing light. That's the area I would think most of the kids would go through, and that would be my concern at 45 miles an hour. And I don't want to wait to see what happens, and then when something happens and it's not a good situation, that's all. So I don't know. I don't know what we can do about it. I understand that the concern is if we require something, it falls back on the county, but it's something of a serious concern that I have.
Anything further?
I think the bottom line is, at some point in the future, somebody is going to have to probably build some sidewalks and put a slow school zone in place, et cetera, to handle the traffic, particularly if they reach the 1,700 students eventually that they hope to reach. I don't know on whom the sidewalk responsibility falls. I don't know if it's the county. I don't know if it's the association. These are private roads, aren't they, that the kids would be coming from?
Correct, these are private roads. On the internal segments of Point West Drive, 16th is a county road. There is a safe routes to school. And again, typically, our Public Works Department would work with the school to assess any safe routes, and especially if they're being guided towards a crossing on 16th Street, making sure that that the improvements are there, or working with the applicant to make sure that there's a crossing personnel there to make that.
I think the issue will at some point get addressed, particularly if the school is that successful.
Yeah, and I think you'll let you a little bit of chicken and egg as the population builds and there becomes a justification for a slow speed zone. And I think that's getting back to what needs to be evaluated as the facility and time goes on, as the facility grows and time goes.
I'm taking some comfort in the fact that the three players here, being the school, the neighborhood, and the county, you're all kind of rowing in the same direction. You all have the same interest at stake, which is you want the kids to be safe. So I assume the three of you, when the time comes, will cooperatively resolve that issue. I don't know how we can address it really today in a site plan approval for the school.
Correct, it is a public facility improvement, not related specifically to the site plan in that respect. One of the things that, again, will help is with a signal at 74th and 16th, it will provide some breaks to the traffic as there's more of a pause there when the signal turns.
But that won't be required until they have 1,200 kids there. Correct?
Yeah, prior to the CO for phase 2, so prior to 1,200, yes.
600, not 1,200.
Sure, he did.
Well, the first phase is 6, and then second phase is,
Correct, but I think John clarified that the
Okay.
additional
This
600
year.
children wouldn't be there until that late. Is
Okay.
installed and functional.
May I?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you. Erica Raines again. With regards to the kids coming from the area without the sidewalks, and you were describing where they could cross to safely and walk and catch the sidewalks. So if we have multiple students coming from that area, if it looks like there's going to be a lot of students there, as a charter school, I have the ability to require them to follow a certain path. As a charter school, we have contracts with our parents. If the parents or students violate the contracts, I can dismiss the students from my program. And this is something that we do on a regular basis throughout the schools in our company, as well as my schools in St. Lucie County also. So if it looks like we have a number of students coming there, I can require them to follow the safe path, and I can put somebody over there until they're trained. Like he mentioned earlier, the first couple of weeks, it's all about training the students and training the parents. But that is something that the school can control through contracts with our parents. And then if this is approved tonight, I'll have Joe to send an email tomorrow requesting the school zone be started, that process be started.
Thank you.
I want my
Please, would you
children
like to ask
safe.
some questions?
Yeah, can I ask you a question about
Please.
that? That's not so much my concern, is about crossing that street from that neighborhood. Because they're mentioning this corner, but just south of that, you know what I'm talking about, that street that goes from the clubhouse, I don't know, it's 14th
14th
Lane? It's not on this map.
No.
So it's just south of this street. That's gonna be a concern. Because like you said, they can go 45 miles an hour down that street. And just because kids know to cross there, and there is a sidewalk on both sides, but the concern is crossing that street, 74th.
If there are numerous kids coming from that area, we'll position someone there.
Okay,
If
so a
there's-
crossing
there's
guard?
A crossing guard, an SRO, an SRD, a trained employee who's gone through the crossing guard training, whatever we need to do, we'll position someone there.
Yeah, because I think you're gonna have an issue with both of those corners.
And keeping in mind, this first phase that we're talking about K-1 too. Parents are not letting 6 and 7-year-olds walk that far across those types of roads. So K-1 too is the first phase, if that makes a difference.
Big difference.
Then K-1 too is the first phase. The second phase is 3, and then we grow a year at a time after that.
Any further questions? Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Ethel Walker, and I'm on the HOA board at Point West. We've had major discussions with the school, and our first concern, as Mr. Smith brought up, is that intersection at 16th and 74th. There'll be 600 students, okay, at K-1, 2. And I know for a fact that people are moving to Point West because a charter school is coming in. However, as Ms. Rain stated, most of them will not be walking, obviously, but they'll be driving in their parents' car because they're going to be less than 2 miles away. And that intersection is a real, real concern. Why we're waiting to phase 2 is, I can't really understand that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? No? Gentlemen, have anything else? Any further questions? Please, ma'am, come forward. And there's a microphone right here at this podium if you don't want to walk all the way over here.
I'm Dory Phillips. I'm a resident of South Village, and I almost got T-boned tonight at that intersection because I was heading north on 74th, and I saw somebody coming on 16th Street, and I slowed down because I've seen way too many times they don't stop. And sure enough, they didn't stop. And if I hadn't been already slowing down with my foot on the brake, I would have been in an accident tonight coming here. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? No? Okay, gentlemen, any further questions of staff or the applicant? None? Well, when you'd like, please give me a motion.
Well, I'll go ahead and move that we approve with the conditions from, in our materials, staff's recommendations, plus the additional condition that was added tonight. I'll go ahead and make that motion, then discuss it for a second.
Sure.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, please discuss it.
Yeah, just from a discussion standpoint, the school's a reality. It's part of the original approval of this whole plan development. And I think we have raised some questions tonight as it relates to the students who are going to be walking to this school. And I'm just kind of counting on, as I say, everybody's got the same interest here. So I think that if it becomes at all dangerous for the kids either in walking in the streets where there are not sidewalks or crossing 16th Street or 74th, whatever, I guess I've got a confidence level that the county, the association, and the school will go ahead and address those issues. So I'll support it and have the project go forward.
Thank you, Alan. So at this point, we have a motion by Alan, which includes current staff recommendations and the additional staff recommendations noted tonight. We have a second by Mr. Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Next order of business, Commissioner matters. Are there any? None? Planning matters.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Roland DuBois, Community Development Director, just want to make it, you're all aware that the next P&Z meeting would be on December 12th, and we do expect to have a meeting on that date. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, that was December 12th?
December 12th.
Attorneys matters? Meeting is adjourned.